You see, silence unnerves them. Not the kind where you vanish completely. No, I mean the silence where you're right there, fully present, fully aware, fully deliberate, and yet you say nothing. That silence, the one where they know they've crossed a boundary, but you didn't shout, didn't weep, didn't justify. You just gazed and walked away. That's the silence that drives them wild. Because people don't fear the noisy ones. They fear those who've tamed their inner turmoil, who burned in secret, healed in private, and rose without craving validation. And you're becoming that force. You're becoming formidable, not because you seek to harm them. No, not at all. Because now, you don't even care enough to try. You're done explaining yourself. You've quit playing nice, stopped overgiving, ceased entertaining those who couldn't match your effort, even on their best day. Once you pleaded for clarity. Now you end the entire conversation and watch their reaction. Fearful, disoriented, remorseful. Because when someone goes quiet after being wounded, that silence becomes a mirror, forcing others to face their own reflection. What they did, what they lost, what they'll never reclaim. But let me tell you why this shift is bigger than them. You didn't just close a door, you built a fortress and etched upon it all the truths you once whispered in the dark. Your worth, your loyalty, your scars. Your silence now speaks louder than every apology they never offered, reverberating in their minds like a countdown. Because now, you're not trying to prove anything. You're not striving to convince them of your value. They'll see it themselves. Too late. That's when it hits. They thought you needed them to shine, but you've forged your own light in their shadows. You've become a presence that lingers without a single word. Listen closely. People always underestimate quiet strength. They mock the calm, dismiss the reserved, but they forget that silence stems from self-mastery, and self-mastery is lethal. That's a man who felt everything: betrayal, abandonment, rejection, and instead of unraveling, he focused. He turned betrayal into insight, pain into strength, rejection into resilience. That's what terrifies them now. You didn't collapse, you broke through, and they feel it, your energy, your detachment, your distance, the way you no longer react. That's the revenge. No shouting, no public rants, just evolution. You let them go, and somehow that silence suffocates them more than any harsh words ever could. They thought you'd beg, you didn't. They thought you'd chase, you didn't. They thought they could come and go, and you'd stay, but you didn't. That's why your presence is feared now. You're unpredictable, unreadable, emotionally unavailable to anything that feels fake, forced, or familiar. That's the power they'll never grasp until they lose access to it, until they realize your silence wasn't weakness. It was preparation, the forging of a weapon crafted in patience, logic, and calm. That weapon? It's you now, a walking consequence, a man who doesn't flinch, doesn't argue, doesn't explain. You observe and vanish when you're done. They'll never know what hit them. Because silence doesn't just end conversations. It shatters illusions, halts manipulation, breaks cycles, and you ended them all quietly. So they fear you now, not because you threatened them, but because you stopped needing them, because you moved in silence, because your loyalty wasn't a chain, and now you're the one who walks away and never looks back. That's why the air feels heavier when you enter. That's why they avoid your gaze. That's why they whisper in your presence. Because without uttering a word, your silence tells the entire story. and they know exactly what they lost without you ever needing to say it. They never saw it coming, did they? The quiet one, the one they thought they could toy with, delay, betray, was observing, listening, calculating. You weren't reacting, but that doesn't mean you were blind. You saw everything, every fake smile, every tardy reply, every shift in tone, every moment they thought they were outsmarting you. And you smiled, not because it was fine, but because you knew their game and let them play it. You gave them rope, and they thought it was trust. It was a test, and they failed spectacularly. See, most people don't realize the scariest thing about a man isn't how loudly he roars or how swiftly he strikes. It's how long he watches in silence before cutting ties forever. That's the version of you they never anticipated. The version tired of explaining, tired of begging, tired of fixing what he didn't break. The version that chose peace over people. And once you reach that plane, you become untouchable. You know what happens when someone like you goes silent? They panic. Your silence isn't empty. It's loaded with truth, clarity, realization. They start overanalyzing, replaying moments, trying to decipher what you saw, what you felt, what you uncovered. But you don't offer closure anymore. That's not your role. Your role was to be authentic, to give, to love, and you did, but they didn't cherish it, didn't protect it. They thought they had time to return, to apologize, to fix it later. But you're not the same. You've outgrown the version of yourself that tolerated disrespect in the name of love. You've shed the skin of the man who stayed to keep peace while dying inside. You've evolved into someone they can't access anymore, and that's what shakes them. They see it now. You were the blessing, and they fumbled it. Let's be clear. You're not emotionless, not heartless. You're just done. There's a difference. You still feel, but now you guard those feelings. You still care, but you don't overextend. You still love, but you've stopped offering that love to those who only wanted its perks without earning it. They mistook your kindness for weakness, your forgiveness for forgetfulness. They thought you'd always be there, even when they gave you every reason to leave. But you changed, and the scariest change of all. You didn't broadcast it. You just became it, quietly. Now, they feel it in every space you're absent from. They feel it when they check their phone and don't see your name. They feel it when no one matches the energy you gave so effortlessly. That's the fear. They're realizing you weren't just someone they liked. You were someone they needed. And now, you're gone. Why is this silence more powerful than vengeance? Because vengeance demands action, but silence demands mastery. It means you have nothing left to prove, no battles left to fight. You've already won by walking away with your dignity intact, by refusing to let them control your emotions, by keeping quiet while your life ascends in silence. That's a power they can't rival, because now they're stuck with their choices while you're becoming everything they doubted, every goal they mocked, every dream they scoffed at, every plan they tried to derail. You're building it all quietly. And that silence, it's loud now, because absence is felt more than presence. When the one who's gone was genuine, they feel your silence like a scream in their chest. They sleep with it, wake with it, wonder about it. And guess what? You don't owe them a single answer. You gave them everything once. Now, you give them nothing. Here's what they'll never admit. They respected you more the moment you stopped talking, stopped justifying your worth, stopped explaining your loyalty, your love, your silence. When you didn't chase, didn't call, didn't text, didn't beg, that's when it sank in, because people don't realize what they had until they see you thriving without them, glowing without them, moving without them, breathing without ever mentioning their name. That's when it gets cold. Not for you. You've weathered the storm and sharpened yourself in its winds. But for them, it's cold when they realize the one who carried the connection finally let it fall. You held the weight, sustained the bond, made the effort. But the moment you stopped, the relationship crumbled because you were the lifeline. Without you, there's nothing. See, people fear silence because it exposes truth. Loud drama distracts, giving a false sense of control. But silence forces them to sit with themselves, to realize they lost someone unshakable, someone who'd have gone to war for them, who saw their flaws and still gave their all. And they betrayed that, not once, but repeatedly, with every lie, every moment of distance, every ignored signal. They tested you, and now they're failing the test of your absence because what you gave was rare. They're learning that the hard way, through comparison, through trying to replace you and finding only shallow imitations, no depth, no effort, just fleeting fillers that echo the silence back at them. What's ironic, they never expected you to rise without them. They thought their absence would break you, that without their approval, you'd crumble. But here you are, building, growing, standing taller, breathing easier, smiling quieter, not to prove them wrong, but because you proved yourself right. You were always enough, they just weren't enough for you. They couldn't match the love you gave, the vision you held, the loyalty you lived. You were real in a world of facades, and they weren't ready for that. So they walked. Or maybe you did. Either way, you're gone now, and your presence echoes in places they never imagined. In their thoughts, their regrets, their silence. Because now, they're the quiet ones, checking if you're watching, hoping you'll return, starting conversations they know you won't answer. That's the power of growth. It rewrites the story without a scene. Let me be clear. You didn't become cold. You became clear. You grew tired of being the only one who cared, who tried, who bled for a one-sided connection. That's not heartless. It's healing. You chose peace over chaos, focus over noise, respect over attachment, and that silence you carry now, it's sacred, earned through every sleepless night, every broken promise, every overlooked moment. You earned it through survival. Now don't let them disturb that peace. Not again. You don't need to speak to be understood. Your energy speaks. Your growth speaks. Your absence screams louder than your presence ever could. Those who lost you hear it daily, that they had access to you once, that you gave them chances, waited for change, were willing to go all in, and now that access is gone, revoked. That's the real fear, not that you're angry, but that you're done, that you've gone silent, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about yourself now. And here's where it gets raw, not cruel, not violent, just raw, in the way truth always is, when you finally see what they tried to hide, when you go silent, when you stop reacting, when you no longer feel the need to defend yourself or seek closure. You step into a realm most fear to tread, a place of power without noise that terrifies them. because you're no longer their pawn, no longer available for their convenience, no longer waiting for a scrap of acknowledgement. You've become the storm they thought would destroy you. They handed you the blade, and you carved a throne from it. You wear your scars like armor now, and it's quiet, not because you've nothing to say, but because they don't deserve to hear it. How do you truly break someone who took you for granted? Don't yell, don't scream, don't fight. Just vanish in plain sight. Enter the room and offer nothing, no energy, no spark, no reaction. That destroys them, gnaws at them from within, because they know the version of you that needed them is gone. What remains? The version they can't touch, the one who walks away and never looks back. That silence you carry, it's the ghost of all you should have said, all the apologies you never received, all the love you gave without demanding proof. And it haunts them because they didn't expect the day you'd stop caring entirely. But you did. And that scares them more than anger ever could. They were comfortable when you were broken, when you doubted yourself, when you questioned your worth, because it made them feel superior, like you needed them more than they needed you. But now, the tables have turned. You walk like you've buried the past and sown seeds in its ashes. You speak with your silence, move with precision, smile with wisdom. And that's what they can't handle. The version of you that sees through everything, that can't be manipulated, baited, or pulled into their chaos. You've outgrown it. You've outgrown them. And let's talk about that growth. It wasn't easy, was it? It wasn't some viral quote that magically made you stronger. It was hell, nights where your soul screamed while your lips stayed sealed, mornings where you didn't recognize your own reflection, battles with your own mind, days when your heart felt heavy, yet you still showed up. That's what they'll never understand. You didn't get here by chance. You got here through pain, and you turned that pain into structure, control, clarity. Now your silence isn't empty. It's brimming with meaning, boundaries, lessons etched into your core. It makes them uneasy, makes them check their phones, wondering if you've moved on, if someone else has your focus. And you don't even need to say a word. But the harshest truth for them, they lost someone who never wanted to outshine them. You weren't competing. You were investing. You weren't tallying scores. You were building. And they mistook that for weakness, thought your consistency made you disposable. Your humility meant low standards. So they gambled and lost, because now you don't play their game. The board is empty, and they're alone, staring at a screen no longer lit by your name. That's what real silence does. It doesn't just mute sound. It blocks access, locks the gates to the world they took for granted. And now they're exiled. You've moved on, while they're stuck outside the life they thought they could enter and exit at will. You're not angry, not hurt, not even distant. You're just done. Done explaining, done defending your heart, done negotiating with those who only wanted you when it fed their ego. And the scariest part for them? You didn't burn bridges. You walked away and let the bridge decay. You gave them chances, more than you should have. You gave them time, patience, presence, protection, guidance, support. And they treated you like an option, a name, a story, until they realized you were the entire chapter, the one that held the narrative together, the one that gave it meaning. Now, that chapter's closed. No noise, no farewell, Just silence, and that silence is deafening. People don't fear being blocked or cursed out. They fear the day they look for you and find nothing. No trace, no drama, just absence. That's what makes the guilt unbearable. If you'd fought, they could have called you bitter. If you'd shouted, they could have labeled you emotional, but you gave them nothing, and that leaves them with everything: the truth, the mirror, their actions, all you didn't say. It echoes in their minds every time they scroll, every sleepless night, every time they see someone who reminds them of you. Because your silence doesn't just mark your absence, it highlights their choices. And that's what breaks them, not you. Their decisions, their selfishness, their arrogance. They thought you were replaceable, and now they see you were the standard. But true silence isn't passive. It's a declaration, a reclaiming of your energy, a statement. I don't need to be seen to know my worth. That's the most powerful stance you'll ever take. Not speaking, just being, living, elevating. While those who failed you scramble to make sense of you, no longer making sense to them. You don't respond like before. You don't flinch, don't bend, don't justify. You've escaped the emotional cage they trapped you in, and now they're screaming within the walls you once begged to tear down. That's the justice, not revenge, just evolution beyond their grasp. Because the man you were, the one who tolerated crumbs, gave endlessly, prayed for reciprocation, he's gone. That version died in the silence, and in his place rose someone calm, someone dangerous, someone they should have never pushed away. They won't say it aloud. They won't admit they miss you, won't tell their friends you were the best thing they had, won't post about ruining something real. But you'll see it in their hesitation, their attempts to mimic your energy, their weak, "Hey, how've you been?" texts, knowing they don't deserve a reply. That's what silence reveals, who was real and who was just loud. Because anyone can talk, anyone can pretend, but your silence exposed everything. Now you're feared, not because you did wrong, but because you became someone they can't reach, control, or understand. You're not the soft landing they once had. You're the peak they'll never scale again. So when you're ready, keep climbing. Now, let's talk about what they truly lost, not the version of you that was always there, that forgave the unforgivable, that over-explained and over-loved. No, the real you, the one who listened more than he spoke, who saw potential where none existed, who stood firm in a world of flakes. They didn't lose a nice guy. They lost a guardian, a creator, a man with the power to destroy, but who chose to love. A man who could have chosen anyone, but chose them. They didn't lose a person. They lost a future, one they'll never reclaim. And they know it. They feel it the moment they can't reach you, because no one compares. No one comes close. They'll meet others, faces, smiles, voices, but they won't feel that presence, that grounding, that quiet loyalty you carried, that silence that made them feel safe even as the world fell apart. Now they live in noise, constant, empty, chaotic noise, because silence was peace when you were in it. Now it's punishment. Their nights are long, their thoughts loud, haunted not by your voice but by its absence, by conversations that won't happen, healing that won't come, closure they'll never get. That's what happens when you train people to expect your loyalty, your time, your effort, and then go silent. It's not just a loss, it's a collapse. You weren't an option. You were the foundation, the one who showed up, who was real in every word, every glance, every act. And now that you're quiet, everything feels louder to them. The guilt, the regret, the weight of their choices, the cost of their games. But look at you. You didn't need to strike back, didn't need vengeance. You went ghost. And in that silence, you built, you stacked, you evolved. While they tried to replace the irreplaceable, you became the version of yourself that never settles again. The one who walks into a room and doesn't need to speak. Your energy speaks first. People feel you now, sense the shift. You don't beg, don't chase, don't explain. You exist, and they adjust. That's the energy of someone who's walked through fire and chose to rise, not burn. Someone who's felt everything and now chooses to feel nothing for those who never deserved that access. It's not bitterness, it's boundaries, not coldness, it's clarity. They thought keeping you confused was power, thought inconsistency was a lure, but real ones don't play games. You weren't confused, you were patient, you weren't weak, you were hopeful. But when that hope died, so did your tolerance, and the silence that followed wasn't distance, it was a burial, a quiet funeral for every lie, every hollow apology. You didn't rant, didn't post, you cut the cord. And now they're bleeding from your absence, from the realization that you were the only real thing in a world of pretenders. Let them talk, let them lie, let them pretend they don't miss you. Deep down, they feel it every day, in the silence, in the peace that's no longer theirs, in the version of you that used to care and now doesn't even glance back. Power isn't the last word, it's needing none. Just your silence, your growth, your presence that they'll feel forever, even if they never hear from you again. Now you see it. Power doesn't shout, doesn't beg to be seen. Real power is felt, not heard. It walks in calm, stands firm while the world tries to provoke it. That's what you've become, a man who doesn't react to prove a point, who moves with intention. You're not the loudest anymore. You're the one everyone watches because silence changes everything. You used to defend your name in every argument. Now you don't correct the lies. Let them talk. Let them guess, because nothing unsettles people more than a man who refuses to feed their ego, their drama, their games. They don't know how to handle you because you've taken away what they relied on. Your access, your attention, your effort to keep things alive. You gave that to yourself, and in doing so, you rewrote the story. The moment you stopped fighting to be understood, the battle ended. Truth doesn't need to scream, it stands. You stopped over-explaining to those who listened only to respond, not to hear. You stopped trying to be enough for those blind to the value before them. And when you stopped showing up for those who kept you waiting, they learned what presence truly means. You weren't just there. You were consistent, reliable, loyal, while they were chaos masquerading as mystery, excuses wrapped in charm. You stayed, believing they'd grow, but they didn't. And now your silence says it all. You chose yourself. It's not that you don't feel, you've just learned. Giving more doesn't make someone value you more. Showing your scars doesn't ensure they'll handle you gently. Loving deeply doesn't mean they'll stay. So you close the chapter, not with rage, but with peace. You didn't leave because you hated them. You left because you loved yourself enough to stop bleeding for those who never brought a bandage. That's a strength that doesn't need vengeance, doesn't seek closure, that knows if they cared, you wouldn't be here reasoning with yourself. Silence isn't the absence of love, it's the presence of self-respect. And now that you've chosen silence, don't return to noise. Don't go back to over-explaining, to proving your worth. You don't owe understanding to those who never tried to understand you. You don't owe closure to those who walked away. And you don't owe forgiveness to those who haven't earned your presence. You gave them grace, space, chances, and when they squandered them, you gave them silence. That's fair. That's mercy. In a world screaming to be seen, the man who speaks only when it matters is remembered. He's the one whose absence casts a shadow. Your silence isn't quiet, isn't forgettable. It's power in its purest form. And they'll feel it forever. Now you see how much louder your silence is than your presence ever was. You used to show up for everyone, heart open, hands ready to mend every fracture, voice softening every blow, even as you bled. But now you move differently. You don't rush in, don't offer your soul to those who came to drain it, and suddenly they feel it, not because you attacked, but because you left them with themselves, and they were never strong enough for that. Your presence was a shield, a storm breaker. When you left, the chaos they blamed on you turned and faced them. That silence screamed, you were never the problem. What you've done, most will never grasp. Most are addicted to reaction, craving attention, living in noise. But you chose discipline, chose to vanish into yourself and sharpen. You let them wonder, let them choke on the uncertainty they once forced you to carry. You've become rare, a man who doesn't chase, doesn't repeat himself, doesn't need to be heard to know he's right. You learned silence through betrayal, loneliness, through discovering that most who said, "I'm here," were never built to stay. And that changed you. Silence doesn't just make you distant, it makes you dangerous. You're fueled by calm, not rage, not ego. Calm. That's what breaks them. They can't read you. They don't know if you're healing or planning, if you've forgotten or just stopped caring. That mystery tortures them because people can only control what they predict. And you've become unpredictable. You used to reply instantly. Now you leave them on read. You used to explain your silence. Now it's the answer. You used to offer closure. Now you offer space and let them face what they lost. That's what silence does. It reverses roles without a word. They painted you as Bane, the villain. Let them. The truth emerges, not through arguments, but through contrast. One day, they'll face someone claiming to love like you did, and they'll feel the difference. The hollow words, the lack of depth. They'll remember you, not the misunderstood version, but the one who was fully there. And that memory will hit harder than any insult, because they don't miss what you said, they miss what you were. A presence, a home, a truth they weren't ready to hold. But you've changed, not bitter, not broken, just better. You walk with grace and a hint of danger. You speak only to build, not break. You don't entertain chaos, don't beg to be seen. You've become a man whose silence is its own language, and those who know your past feel it, that shift, that weight. They fear it, not because you'll destroy them, but because you already did, quietly, by walking away, by letting them face the mirror alone. And here's the brutal truth they'll carry like a shadow. They know you would have stayed, would have forgiven, would have opened your door one more time if they'd acted differently when it mattered. But they didn't. They gambled, pushed, tested your limits, and they lost, not because you exploded, but because you went quiet. In that silence, they heard everything, every disappointment, every betrayal, every letdown. Now they scroll through memories like a crime scene, trying to pinpoint when they lost you. But they didn't lose you in one moment. They lost you in every small one, every ignored message, every cold reply, every excuse. Death by 1,000 cuts, and now they hold the blade. They thought you'd always return, that your silence was temporary, that your heart was too soft to stay gone. But even the strongest hearts have limits. Even those who forgive eventually stop forgiving themselves for lingering too long. That's where you are now. Not angry at them, but at yourself, for shrinking, for waiting, for giving so much to those who gave so little. That realization sealed it, turned your silence from a reaction into a boundary. You didn't just ignore them, you outgrew them, outgrew the chaos, the apologies, the promises with expiration dates. You outgrew needing someone to explain why they couldn't love you right. And now they feel it, not in your words, but in your distance. That hurts more than anything you could have said. You were their constant, their safe place, their voice of reason, calming the storms they created. Now they're lost in their own noise, trapped in their patterns, because what they had with you was rare. You weren't replaceable. You were a mirror, showing them what love looks like with depth, patience, intention. Now they see that reflection crack of when someone like you walks away, the room changes, the air grows heavy, the silence unbearable. You weren't causing the chaos, you were holding it back. Now your silence is their greatest teacher, teaching that loyalty is a gift, not a leash. That love is real only when reciprocated. That presence should never be taken for granted. But you're done being a lesson. You're here to be treated right from the start, not offering second chances to those who squandered the first, not making room for those who dined on your peace and brought only drama. That forgiving, endlessly patient version of you is gone, not because he was weak, but because he learned his worth. Now, you're the storm after the silence, not loud, not wild, just undeniable. You walk into rooms differently, move with clarity. You don't hope people stay. You know they will if they're meant to. If they don't, that's the universe clearing space. You speak only when it matters, give only when it's earned, trust only when it's proven. That's what they fear now, because the next time they see you, if they ever do, you'll be a stranger, one they should have fought to keep. Silence doesn't just change how they see you, it changes how you see yourself. When you stop explaining your heart to those who treated it like a doormat, you realize how sacred it is. You see how heavy it was to carry people who never asked if you were tired, how loud you screamed inside while pretending all was well. When you put down that noise, when you shut the door and ignored the knocks, you didn't just find peace, you found yourself. The real you, buried under second chances and broken promises. The one who doesn't chase, doesn't shrink to fit rooms too small for his stature. You're whole now, and if someone wants into your life, they come correct or not at all. You didn't go silent to be petty, you went silent to heal. In that healing, you built walls, not to block love, but to keep out disrespect. You stopped bleeding for those who came to watch, stopped performing, stopped giving front row seats to those who couldn't clap for your victories. You shut it down, and the silence that followed was your rebirth. Now, when they speak your name, there's hesitation, a tremble, not from fear you'll harm them, but from guilt. They know they wronged you, know they held gold and treated it like rust, know you stayed solid while they crumbled. Now, they know what it's like to be on the other side, where your silence is the verdict and they regret the sentence. That's the justice. You didn't destroy them. You removed yourself. And with you went the comfort, the loyalty, the safety, the one who meant every word, who showed up when no one else did. Gone, not with a bang, but a whisper. That whisper carries through every connection they try to forge, every forced smile, every "I'm fine" lie they tell themselves. They know they had something real, and they threw it away for games, for ego, for whatever wasn't worth it. Now, they carry that weight in silence, just as you did. The difference? You healed, you built, you rose. They're still chasing echoes of something they'll never find again. So when you stand in a room now, you don't need to speak. People feel you, your composure, your discipline, your self-respect. You became what they feared, untouchable, not because you're invincible, but because you no longer tolerate what once broke you. You built a fortress from every betrayal, every discarded promise, every silent sacrifice. Now, your silence is your peace, and the price for disturbing it is clear. They lose you forever.